They pulled it out of the peat in silence. Ravemos Bog, near Gundestrup, Himmerland, 1891. 9 kilos of worked silver stacked like a broken altar under the moss. It did not lie there by accident, it was placed. Taken apart by human hands, lowered onto living ground and sealed. Not lost, handed back. This is not treasure, this is a message, and you are not supposed to see it. North Jutland, Himmerland. A small bog called Ravemos, 170 meters across, ringed by low ground and scrub birch. The cauldron lays 60 to 90 centimeters down, not in open water, on firm turf. No pond plants in the layer. It was placed on living ground, and then the bog grew over it. This is not an empty landscape. Within walking distance, a fortified settlement, Bormos, was located in the mire, and war gear was thrown into wetlands as offerings, bodies laid in peat as warnings or vows. They found it broken on purpose. 13 silver plates and 1 missing. 5 inner scenes, 7 outer faces, 1 base, the rim, and iron core sleeved inside silver tubes. The metal is almost pure silver, 97%. It had been used, handled, worn, then taken apart and offered. Radiocarbon puts it in the last 2 centuries before the birth of Christ. This is late Iron Age. This is alive at the same time as marching tribes, collapsing kingdoms, and Rome rising. This is the world the cauldron came from. This is the world it was buried to protect. Before it was an offering in the north, it was a commission in the south. The silver was drawn from Balkan ore, hammered, annealed, and chased by a Thracian workshop on the frontier, where Celtic war bands and Thracian smiths shared the same fire. They did not beat the forms flat like common trade bowls. They raised figures out of living metal. They worked over beeswax mixed with fine sand, softened, pressed, cooled, then cut back and chased from the front. The 6 identified tool sets reveal a collective atelier, not an individual artist. Each tool set corresponds to distinctive visual language. Most interestingly is tool set 3. It's for schematic faces, heavier relief, and the base plate. Crosswork between plates shows coordinated supervision. One master hand orchestrating composition, but delegating execution. This suggests a formalized workshop hierarchy, possibly a mobile court workshop attached to a regional chief or temple complex. One master directing them all. They drew on the backs before they raised the faces on the front. A horn player, a man's profile, 2 cats. Planning, instruction. You are looking at the thinking process of Iron Age metalworkers. The plates were not just hung loosely, they were wired to an iron core, soldered with a tin-silver alloy. The rim is a spine of iron inside a skin of silver. The head of each god sits under that ring. At the bottom they set the scene of sacrifice, the bull, the dogs, the rider with spurs. That plate is not random art, it is the foundation panel. It is the ground the ritual stands on. This was not village work. This was court work. Frontier work. The kind of work you make for people who want the world in their hands. Now we talk about what can be measured. The cauldron is almost pure silver, 97%. Isotope work ties it to Balkan ore fields in the Thracian zone south of the Danube. The seams are sealed with a tin-silver solder. You can still see the scrape marks where the excess was cut away after the plates were bound to the iron rim. 8 tubes wrapped that spine. Only 2 survive. The rest were torn away long before it was buried. Gold was laid cold on chosen details. Some of the gods once had eyes of blue glass. It's an Eastern Mediterranean recipe from the 1st century before Christ. On the backs of the plates where no worshipper would ever look, they scratched working sketches. This is planning and instruction. This is a workshop teaching itself how to make a god. Residue analysis shows beeswax mixed with fine sand. That was their support under the silver skin while they pushed the forms out. This is the Thracian school. The iron was dated to 200 to 50 years before the birth of Christ, so the line is exact. Forged in the Thracian Celtic frontier around 100–200 BCE, carried north, taken apart, laid in the peat of Himmerland. What it shows next, that is where lore begins. Now we ask the only question that matters. Why is Thracian silver sleeping in a Danish bog? The cauldron was not made in the north, but it did not stay in the south. It belonged to a border world, a world where Thracian smiths and Celtic war leaders shared the same fire. That frontier between the Danube and the Carpathians was not peaceful. It was a marketplace of gods, weapons, and oaths. At the same moment in history, northern war bands were on the move. Classical writers called them the Cimbri. They came out of the Jutland Peninsula, the same region where the cauldron would one day be given to the bog. The Cimbri's great southward expedition around 120 BCE carried them from the Jutland down through Bohemia into Pannonia along the Danube corridor. They marched the same corridor where the Thracian Celtic workshop stood and across the same ground where this cauldron was made. Listen to the pattern. We have Thracian hands making a ritual object in silver of near-moon purity. We have Celtic symbols, torques, Carynix trumpets, triads of sacrifice hammered into that silver. We have Balkan-style glass inlaid in the eyes. We have a northern tribe moving directly through that world in that window of time. And then we have that same vessel dismantled with care, offered in the Cimbri's own ground in Himmerland. This is not loot thrown away. Look at the language engraved into it. The horned one seated between beasts, the lore of balance. The wheel lifted toward the sky, the lore of order. The warrior lowered into the cauldron, the lore of death and return. The bulls slain in threes, the lore of cost. The woman among elephants and griffins, the lore of sovereignty and fertility brought from far away. This is a ritual book in metal. You would carry this if you thought you were carrying your world. So here is the reading. A war group from the north moves south into the Danube world. They ally, raid, bargain, swear, bleed. They commission or obtain an object that encodes power, rebirth, and divine protection. All power has a last moment. Even sacred metal has an ending. The cauldron was not shattered in anger. It was taken apart correctly. The plates were lifted free from the iron spine. Tin solder was scraped back by hand. The world was opened. This is ritual unmaking, forging of order and the use of it. And last, order is returned. They laid the plates in the bog one by one on firm ground, not in water. This was not a lake sacrifice. This was a ground offering. And outside the silver, the world that carried it was breaking. Armies that once walked the Danube frontier were crushed. Names that once roared under horn and banner were taken apart the way, piece by piece, and scattered. This is the part nobody talks about. You don't bury a working ritual core unless the ritual is finished. You only give up something like this if the people who needed it are gone. The last act was surrender, not to an enemy, but to time. It should have ended there in the peat. It didn't. More than 2,000 years later, we took it back out of the dark. Science did what no king and no priest ever could. It opened the cauldron without breaking its law. We asked the silver where it was born, and the silver answered, the Balkans. We dated the breath that shaped it, 200 to 50 years before Christ. That is the same lifetime the Northern war bands moved south, and they from the same place it was laid. And then we saw the drawings no worshipper was ever meant to see, a horn player, a human profile, 2 cats. That is the first and last time the makers speak in their own hand. What survives now is not the ritual. What survives is the memory of it. A northern people that went south took part in a frontier world of silver and oath, carried their cosmos home, and gave it back to the earth. That's still visible. It's all still there, hammered into the faces of the cauldron. Even now, under museum glass, it is not an art object. It is testimony. They thought they were burying a cauldron, but they were burying history. This is the root. South Frontier, Lower Danube, Thracian Silver, Celtic Vision, Steppe Memory, North Return, Himmerland, Bog, Silence. They did not hide it to keep it safe. They laid it down to give it back. That is not loot. Its last rite. All forms must pass through fire. All law must pass through silence. All memory must pass through earth. Thank you for coming along. If you want to support the channel, join our Ring of Fire. More myths, more discoveries from the architect. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.